Molo Sanbonani, hello, how's it? Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to the Wednesday edition of Vuka Nazo, your morning news analysis show. My name is Sibongile Mani, aka Big Daddy Liberty. Right, wow, remember, your only price of admission, whether you're watching the simulcast on YouTube or Facebook, is to smash that like button. And if you are watching on YouTube in particular, please subscribe to the channel, hit that bell notification, help me reach my goal of 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Remember, you can also find us on our website at bigdaddyliberty.com. There, of course, you can also pledge some financial support to the work that we do. Anything between 50 to 100 Rand a month. 75 Rand is about the average, and you really do help us spread the liberty message. Now, with that jibber jabber out the way, let's get straight into the news. Okay, we begin in the Eastern Cape. Goodness me, South Africa is a land of opportunity, even for the more criminally inclined. What am I talking about? Of course, I take you to the Walter Sisulu University in the Eastern Cape, where, of course, there was an election for the convocation committee. This is a committee of students, made up of students, which basically helps in the governance of the university. Now, election was underway. All the candidates were well into their campaigning, and a certain odd candidate cropped up. I'm going to put on screen her election poster. Now, if you are savvy and you don't have a goldfish memory, you'll remember that the person in this image, a one Sibongile Mani, was exactly, yes, that's right, some of you are clicking. Sibongile Mani is the same woman who was convicted, a convicted fraudster, of having effectively blown 800,000 Rand of a 14 million Rand payment she received from the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, or NSFAS. Now, of course, the money was erroneously paid into her account, and instead of her basically coming forward and mentioning this rather millionaire mistake, she proceeded to blow that money. As I said, nearly R1 million of it spent on frivolous things, from trips to Cape Town, alcohol, booze, parties, expensive gifts for friends. Nearly R1 million of what is money meant for other students was blown by Miss Mani. Of course, she was convicted and found guilty of theft by the East London Regional Court. Yes, that character then decided to run for treasurer of the convocation committee at Walter Sisulu University. It's how else do you describe this? As just an absolute clown world situation, and indeed exemplifies really the sometimes unserious nature that South African voters can be. And why am I saying South African voters? Because in essence, she has been voted in as the treasurer. Now, let me read from this Times Live piece, which really details this clown worldish situation. Now, Sibongile Mani has reportedly been elected as treasurer of the Walter Sisulu University's convocation committee, but confirmation of her appointment will be made later this week after, of course, vetting has taken place. End of quote. Now, again, bear in mind, people, and just the delicious irony and amusing irony, they elected her treasurer.
Hong, hong, hong.
They elected the person who blew 800,000 Rand of money she received illicitly, or rather by mistake, let me not say illicitly, but that person, that irresponsible person who did that, indeed convicted of theft, was elected treasurer by students.
Are you intellectually bankrupt?
Is this where our voting direction is heading into the future, considering these are young individual students at the university? That's the question I'm left with. And really, and besides me laughing about this, it's actually deeply concerning that students would not even hold one of their own within their own peer group to a higher standard, indeed voting in a convicted thief as their treasurer. For shame. Okay, I take you now to Limpopo, indeed, in a story that can only be described as Hollywood action movie, prison break, escape-esque extravaganza. I mean, I make rather light of it in making that comparison, but it's a very very dangerous situation after, as I said, 6 awaiting trial prisoners who were being transported by the South African police were effectively busted out of police custody by armed men who attacked the convoy that they were being transported in. As I said, the scenes were like a Hollywood movie as a group of heavily armed men attacked this police convoy, freeing 6 of these particular individuals who are of Zimbabwean nationality and who right now as I speak are on the run. Now let me read this Times Live piece which described these 6 men as follows. Now those who escaped are Forward Shumba, who's 26, Shingirai Nyandome, who's 32, Brilliant Sibanda, who's 26, Eric Sithole, who's 3, and Moses Zambara, 32-year-old, and Alex Nkomo, 35. All except Nkomo were arrested for aggravated robbery, 3 counts of attempted murder, and unlawful possession of firearms and ammunition, whilst Nkomo was arrested for the theft of cables. Now, police, of course, are on the hot trail of the suspects and are pursuing them. The article goes on to say that people are advised not to approach the suspects under any circumstances as they were considered dangerous, but instead must call the police. End of quote. And again, I want to echo those sentiments, guys. We live in a country, just as a reminder for those who might sometimes forget, I don't know how, we live in a country where criminals rule the roost. And if these men were broken out by heavily armed, presumably members of their gang, if it is a gang, then you can presume that they are armed and very, very dangerous. If you are in that part of South Africa, Limpopo, please, and if you do see any of these men, please contact the South African Police Service and do not approach these individuals. Okay, so now I take you to Pretoria, indeed Tshwane municipality, where the DA, Action SA, what's broadly called as the Reform Coalition, have fluffed it again. They've messed it up once again after the shenanigans involving that former COPE councillor who's now resigned in disgrace. Yes, the forger in chief, Umuronyo Makwarela. Well, after that saga, well, obviously the council then had to sit again and elect a new Speaker of the House. Now, you'd have expected that the Reform Coalition would have gotten it right and would have elected the Action SA candidate of their coalition, a one Kolofelo Morodi, who, as I said, is from Action SA. Now, she stood against a candidate from the ATM, the African Transformation Movement, Councillor Mncedi Ndzwanana. He, of course, is in coalition with the ANC and the EFF. Now, after much shenanigans in the council, you would have expected, as I said, that the Reform Coalition, who have the votes, well, do they, but have the votes, would have won. No, they didn't. As I said, the winning councillor who's now elected the Speaker of the House is Mncedi Ndzwanana. There you see him looking rather chuffed with himself and rather happy as he re-ushers in or brings back in the ANC-EFF coalition. Now, as I said, the voting here is where everything went wrong. The DA's 69 votes effectively being disqualified. Let me quickly read this EWN piece which wrote up the story and we'll get back to how this all happened. Now, the ATM's candidate received 105 votes, whilst the Morodi, who's of course the Action SA candidate, only got 37. There was a total of 69 votes deemed spoilt by the Electoral Commission of South Africa. Now, as I said, speaking after his election, the ATM's councillor Ndzwanana, who of course is in that coalition with the ANC and EFF, was actually quite chuffed. This is what he said as he was quoted after the election. Ndzwanana said that he wanted to introduce a culture in the Tshwane Council where all councillors were treated equally despite political affiliation. However, he said service delivery is the priority. End of quote. Now, you're probably wondering, how did this all happen? What's the story with the 69 votes of the DA? Well, the DA basically instructed, as we are hearing, its councillors to, instead of a X, where they'll be voting in this particular election for the council speaker, to number their votes, presumably numbering them according to the 69 councillors in there. This presumably was to prevent the scenes from last time that saw allegedly either councillors from Action SA or the DA effectively switch their votes, and which saw Umuronyo Makwarela, the former speaker, that disgraced COPE councillor who was in coalition with the ANC and EFF, that saw him ascend over Celier's Brink for the position of mayor. So this time the DA instructing allegedly his councillors to vote using a numbered system from 1 to 69. That is what the Electoral Commission, which oversaw this election, deemed as irregular and spoiled ballots and therefore disqualifying the votes of the DA. This is Cilliers Brink, who of course is the DA caucus leader in Tshwane Council, speaking after that decision and seemingly very upset by it, saying he'll take this to court.
So all of the votes of the Democratic Alliance, 69, were disqualified for the reason of how those votes were expressed. The electoral law in this country is clear. If the intention of the voter is clearly indicated, doesn't matter with what marking, if the intention of the voter is clearly indicated, that vote must go to the candidate where the intention is indicated. Unfortunately, the IEC, whose bias we were concerned about from the outset of today, indicated that because of the marking that was used on 69 ballot papers, which is the number of DA votes in the council, which all went for the Action SA candidate, that was disqualified, it was kicked out. So clearly it's a ridiculous situation. We have left council, we do not accept this result. We haven't signed off on the result slip, and we are going to consult our attorneys first thing tomorrow morning to see what our options are to overturn this.
Yeah, as you heard, Cilliers Brink of the DA saying they'll take this to court, but that might be an uphill battle. And why? Because if you actually read the Electoral Commission's handbook on this particular matter, now this is the Election Observer Handbook, albeit for municipal elections. It basically, if you read section 9.9, one of the points it makes there, that the ballot papers can be rejected, or must actually be rejected, if the marking on the ballot paper indicates the identity of the voter. Now, it can be argued, and the Electoral Commission, as it heads to court on this, if the DA does take this to court, will likely argue that the numbering system was a way of identifying the said voter. It could very well play out that way. Of course, the DA might or likely make the argument, as you heard Cilliers say, that actually any mark, as long as it clearly indicates who the voter is intending to vote for, is eligible. It will be those two arguments that clash in court. I, for one, will be very interested to see how this plays out in an electoral court. Indeed, it will be very interesting going forward. But nonetheless, how I'm going to say it, because no one else will, the DA may have fluffed this one. And Action SA probably should be looking at its DA partners with a little bit of annoyance on this, because it continues that topsy-turvy turbulence that now characterizes the Tshwane municipalities. And at the end of the day, voters and residents are screwed by the situation. All right, that's it for this episode of Vuka Nazo. Let me know what you think, please, in the comment section. A reminder to you, please, if you're watching this broadcast on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. And of course, regardless of where you're watching it, hit that like button. Help me grow my engagement and indeed reach of the show. Find us, of course, at our website at bigdaddyliberty.com. Guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow again bright and early for another episode of Vuka Nazo.